Hi, my name's Phil. I'd like to talk about politics. And last year, we're told there were 35,000 people taking part in the Pride event in Budapest. Since then, Viktor Orban has come up with a way in which he thinks he could ban it. So, in line with the government, Budapest police banned Pride this year. However, instead of the intended 0 people taking part yesterday, it turned out to be, according to the BBC, anywhere between 1 and 200,000 people. That's compared to 35,000 last year. That is a protest and a half right there. But for daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel so you can stay notified. So, as Prime Minister, Viktor Orban attempts to cling on to power by dismantling the foundations of democracy that he has, like fascists across the Western world, targeted people within the Pride umbrella. He thought he'd found a way to ban Pride this year. But in true Barbara Streisand style, all he's ended up doing is persuading way more people to come out for it. You know, it's been in recent years tens of thousands, now it's well over 100,000. I mean, look at this. If that isn't two fingers up at a government, I don't know what is. Of course, just as with any in-your-face protest against fascism, Orban's not going to simply chunter under his breath at the humiliation, is he? He is reported to have installed lots of CCTV with the intention of identifying people involved and fining them after the event. But there will have to be a legal challenge first, of course. The parade did not take place unilaterally. It had the full and enthusiastic support of Budapest Mayor, who is arguing, sorry, mate, Victor, it doesn't fall under the drug-fueled interpretation you have of the law because the event is authorised by the local council. So this will not be the end of it. Orban will seek to press his authority, the courts will be brought in, and the EU Commission will be watching presumably very carefully because they've had concerns for years that Orban is failing to comply with Hungary's duty to maintain basic democratic norms expected of all EU members. But how did Orban even try to ban Pride, which surely should be permitted under the right to free assembly? Well, he decided that homosexuality was basically the same as paedophilia and banned it on the basis that it is lawful to ban anything which might introduce children to the promotion of, for example, paedophilia, like a promotion of family values thing. And of course, if you're going to march through the middle of a city, then yes, there is just a chance that maybe some children will see you. Of course, the entire concept is nonsense. You'd have to be as high as a kite to believe it. However, Orban's MPs, who apparently are as high as kites, passed a law saying just this. It's very much like when Rishi Sunak in the UK passed a law which proclaimed that Rwanda was safe, despite very obvious evidence to the contrary. Only in the UK we've still got an independent judiciary. Hungary's judiciary has been weakened over the years, and Orban is, of course, very much the example that Trump copies. Do whatever you like, come up with some ridiculous justification, and dare the authorities to oppose you. If you've already laid the groundwork and made sure those authorities are under your thumb, as Trump has done with the Supreme Court in his first term, then you're in the clear. In this particular case, the police, for example, made no attempt whatsoever to say, well, this is a ridiculous line of thinking. I mean, after all, the law is as the law is. And the courts haven't said otherwise. So the police carried out Orban's orders and banned the parade. But Budapest Mayor said, sorry, there's another law that stipulates that events organised by the council don't fall under these right of assembly rules, which Orban has sought to reimagine. The BBC reported that Orban will, of course, continue to hammer innocent people for the sake of making sure he remains in power at the next election. The government-controlled media had apparently said, well, it will now be up to the courts, and if they find in favour of the mayor, Orban will just change the legislation again. And he's got a large majority to do whatever he likes. And just like Trump, he will be in a race against time to assert his authority here. The time for subtlety will have passed. Hungary's next election is next year. Orban's Fidesz party lost its massive lead in the polls towards the end of last year. It's been dominant for a very long time, not now. He will not give up power easily. He's had it for a very long time. And nor will he conduct himself with due regard for the law. Now, the main saving grace for Hungary, really, is its place in the EU. And the EU demands basic democratic standards in return for membership privileges. Of course, the EU itself is a battleground between liberalism and fascism. It goes beyond Hungary. But for now, the Commission should have enough support to make sure that the Hungarian elections are expected to take place freely and fairly, and presumably until they do, then Hungary would lose membership privileges if there's basically a farce of an election next year. Unlike in the United States, where when it comes down to it, it turns out there is absolutely no institution there to protect the country's democracy other than the people organising to do it themselves. In Hungary, the defiant people who marched yesterday should have the EU on their side at least. But let me know what you think in the comments below. And for more content, you could subscribe to the channel or even join for access to streams and behind the scenes updates. Thanks for watching, and until next time, I'll see you later.